At domain.com.
Alright, so here I am at my favorite Wi-Fi spot in downtown Williamsburg, having a little bit of fun here, and yeah, I'm in Backtrack 4, but this time I'm actually not doing any evil hacker stuff. I'm actually going to show you guys how to use some SSH tunneling to secure yourselves from potential man-in-the-middles. You know, maybe there's a pineapple or something hanging out your way, and you want to actually be a little bit smart about the way that you're, you know, connecting to the internet. So I thought that it would be a great time to talk about a little bit of SSH foo. I've gotten a lot of questions about it recently. I've gotten a lot of comments with some interesting tips, and I thought I'd share those with you. And I'm going to be doing all of this using a VPS that was so graciously provided to me by our friends at domain.com. So thank you guys over at domain.com for hooking me up so I can show you guys some cool things that you could do with you know, a service like that. So let's just go ahead and begin with, you know, SSH tunneling or just using SSH in its very basic form. I mean, it's a secure shell that we just use to connect to our Linux box, and that's exactly what we have living in our cloud here is our Linux VPS running SSH. So I can actually take a look at my services and manage and see that I actually have SSH running here. So let's go ahead and connect to our machine. So for that, just SSH, and I'm going to do root at the IP address here, 66.11.227.124. And I'm just prompted for the root password, so go ahead and pop that in. And I'm greeted with the shell exactly as I would expect to be, and I can, you know, have fun, as much fun as I could in, you know, bash on my, my remote Linux box. But I want to use my remote Linux box to actually tunnel all of my web traffic through, and then later do the same thing with just about any arbitrary port. So let's create a new session here, and I'm going to issue, I'm just going to put a variation on that SSH command here. So we're going to SSH to root at 66.11.227.124. But this time we're going to put TAC capital D 8080. And what that does is it creates a dynamic SOCKS 5 proxy that we can use to send any of our web traffic that supports a SOCKS 5 proxy through. So if I actually launch Firefox here and go into Edit and Preferences, and then on the Advanced tab, click Networking, Settings, and then tell it to use a manual proxy configuration. And under SOCKS host, I'm just going to tell it local, the 127.0.0.1 on port 8080, because that's what we specified. Click OK, click Close, and now I can browse the web, and everything is going to be going through that SOCKS 5 proxy. And I can tell this by just taking a look at what my IP address is. So I can go to any of these sites that's going to tell me what my IP address is here, and I can see that my IP address is in fact the IP of the server that I am, you know, routing all of my traffic through, the 66.11.227.124. And everything in between is through a secure SSH connection. So if anybody were sniffing in between me and my VPS on the cloud, they're not going to get anything but garbage. So that's the fun thing there, and I know we've talked a little bit about this before. I can actually, if I disconnect from this proxy, you can see that rather than that IP I have in my other IP. So there we go. Those are the two different, you know, and that's with and without the proxy there. But we can do more than just setting up dynamic, you know, SOCKS 5 proxies to tunnel a SOCKS 5 compliant application like Firefox with most mail clients. Instead, say like I want to connect to IRC, but I want to do it securely here on the Wi-Fi. And I mean, sure, I could pull up XChat, and I could do, well, let's see, we'll connect to server irc.revision3.com. There we go. And I'm connected, great. But I'm connected from, you know, my IP here at the coffee shop, everything that's going in between my computer here and that IRC server. Anybody here at the coffee shop could totally see that traffic if they were using the right, you know, doing a little man-in-the-middle hack. So what we're going to do is go ahead and tunnel it just like we did before. But this application isn't going to support SOCKS 5 proxy the way I'd want. So what we're going to do is arbitrarily just go ahead and tell it to map an IP address out on the internet. In this example, we're going to be using irc.revision3.com, which in this case is 72.20.17.129. And with IRC, we're connecting to port 669, and we're going to go ahead and map that IP address of that server and that port to something local to us, so that when we connect locally on that port, we're going through that SSH tunnel and to that server. So very similar with the TACD option. SSH to root at our IP address of our server once again. And we can actually combine all of these. So I can put in the TACD space 8080 so that I can use it as a SOCKS 5 proxy, as well as entering the TACL. And we'll just pick another port, I don't know, 8081. And we're going to do 8081 colons, because that's 8081 is the local port that we'll be using, colon, the IP address of the server that we want to connect to. Now this could be a server that is local. If this were on our homeland rather than on the VPS, it could be our Apple TV, which I can connect to over NFS or something like that. But I'd actually like to use this to connect to then something else on, because there's not a whole lot available to me as far as other computers. That's just a single VPS. So I actually want to bounce from that VPS over to the internet. So that's why we're going to use the IP of irc.revision3.com. So pop in the 8081 colon, the 72.20.17.129 for the IP address of the IRC server, and then on port 6669, go ahead and issue that, log in as root. Excellent. And now if I open my IRC server once again, I'm going to disconnect, because that is, I'm connected in plain text. That's no fun. So now we're going to do a /server to 127.0.0.1 space 8081. And now we're connected to that same IRC server, yet we're going through our secure shell. So again, anybody in the middle isn't going to see anything all that exciting. Now, one of the other questions that I got that's kind of similar to this isn't going to help you with your with encrypting your traffic in any way, but it might be useful for anybody that has a corporate firewall or a school firewall that's rather restrictive. They don't want you to get to Facebook or MySpace or whatever you want to do while you're at school or work. We can actually use, since domain.com provided me with this VPS, I'm going to do something very similar with a proxy that's all based on the web. See, in this case, we're using SSH. Port 22, a lot of times we're not going to be able to, use this to bypass a restrictive firewall at our school or our work. But if you can get to a website, any website, then we can set up our own website on our VPS here that we can then, I guess you could say, tunnel your traffic through, but it's not in any shape or form encrypted. Now, what I'm going to be using for this is an open source tool called Proxy. It's a PHP web proxy. So let's go ahead and SCP all of those up to our server. So I first need to create a directory for that. So I'll go ahead and in that first instance, we're SSH'd over to our VPS here. So I just need to change directories. Okay, so I'm in /user/local/apache/htdocs. I'm going to make a new folder called proxy, and I'm going to SCP all of the files that we need for proxy over to the server. We just need 3 files, 2 index PHPs and include and the style sheet. So SCP all those. And now, and that's it. There's no setup involved. All we have to do is pull up our browser, and rather than going to forums.hack5.org, which on a lot of universities and schools and workplaces is actually blocked, and we'll actually just go to the IP address of our server. So HTTP 66.11.227.124, and I will, /proxy. And there we go, we're actually greeted with the proxy or PHP proxy, however you want to say it. And I can go ahead and just enter in a web address here. I've got options about how I want to encode it. If I want to do ROT13, again, this isn't encryption in any way, shape, or form. So if you are doing that here at a public Wi-Fi access point, it's not going to help you with any eavesdropping, but will help you bypass those firewalls. And I'll go ahead and enter in forums.hack5.org, and voila. There we go. I'm browsing the Hack5 forums. I've got this little address bar that it puts right there in the web page on top of the content, where I can remove scripts, accept cookies, show the images, toggle on and off, a bunch of different features. And this is, if you've got your own server, especially if you've got a VPS, a home server, what have you, This is a real simple thing, just in PHP, that you can throw up on a server and go ahead and bypass those firewalls. So again, if you have any questions or comments about this here, go ahead and hit me up, Darren at hack5.org, and in just a minute we're